Picture this. You're standing right there in the cereal aisle at the grocery store. You're looking at two boxes. One is the shiny name brand and the other is the store brand. You pick the cheaper one and right away you feel that familiar little wave of satisfaction. You know the one. You just saved money. You're doing the right thing. But what if I told you that exact feeling is actually a trap? Welcome to this explainer, where we're breaking down a truly eye-opening analysis from Alicia Invests. We're going to look at the hard math behind why doing everything our culture tells us is financially responsible might literally be the exact thing keeping you broke.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at our roadmap for today. We're covering 1. The frugality illusion. 2. Sweating the small stuff. 3. The price of cheap. 4. Pennies versus percentages. And finally, number 5, the structural wealth solution.
Let's start with Section 1, the frugality illusion. Look, it's time to validate a frustration that so many of us feel. I mean, you diligently clip coupons, you always buy the generic brand, and yet your retirement balance hasn't budged, and one single emergency sends you right back into credit card debt. Here is that exact scenario we just talked about. You save $1.90 on cereal by choosing the $2.89 store brand over the $4.79 name brand. You get this false wave of financial satisfaction. You take this exact same logic and apply it to paper towels, to coffee, to bread, and you drive home feeling like an absolute financial genius. But, as Alicia Invest points out, the math here is fundamentally broken. We are focusing all our energy on a target that, frankly, barely matters.
And that brings us to a really fascinating core conflict. On one side, we have what we call cheap frugality. This is all about visible activity. It looks a lot like discipline, but honestly, it's really just anxiety performance. It's congratulating yourself for saving $2 at the store while a $1,200 monthly car payment silently eats your future. On the other side, we have real frugality. Now, this is about invisible math. It is structural. Real frugality completely ignores those tiny visible savings so it can ruthlessly interrogate the massive structural numbers that actually dictate your financial survival.
Section 2. Sweating the small stuff. Now, what's really interesting here is how sweating the small stuff actually creates a massive smokescreen that completely blinds us to the real drains on our money. Look at this data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, updated through 2026. It shows that housing accounts for roughly 33% of average household spending. Transportation, that's another 17%. Half of every single dollar most Americans earn is entirely gone to housing and cars before we even have a chance to agonize over a $4 cup of coffee. We spend immense emotional energy feeling guilty over a $14 lunch we didn't pack, but we completely ignore the $2,000 housing decision we made 3 years ago. The big targets go totally unexamined.
And it gets worse when we break down the brutal math of our so-called money-saving behaviors. Say you drive 4 miles out of your way to a gas station that's 8 cents cheaper per gallon. For a 15-gallon tank, you save $1.20. But wait, the fuel to drive those extra 8 miles round trip costs you $1.12. So your net savings? 8 pennies? Actually, scratch that. It's not even a win, because it also costs you 20 minutes of your time. Or take couponing. Consumer research shows the average coupon user saves 2 to 3% on groceries, but ends up spending 15 to 20% more on impulse purchases just by being in the store longer. The effort literally consumes the savings.
Then there is the hidden cost of holding on to things. UCLA research shows the average American home contains a staggering 300,000 items. We hoard things in our garages and basements just in case they become useful someday, mostly because throwing them away feels wasteful. But storage has a real mathematical cost. According to the Wall Street Journal, the average American household spends roughly $1,800 per year on storage-related costs. That includes rented units and just paying for larger housing footprints to store stuff they never even use. Real frugality is ruthless about what stays. Cheap frugality? It keeps everything and lets the cost quietly compound in the background.
Section 3. The price of cheap.
Performing this cheap frugality actively starves the exact tools you need to build actual wealth. Check out this research from earth.org looking at early 2026 data. They reveal a truly staggering number. The average American throws away roughly 82 pounds of clothing every single year. Why? Because of the false economic of cheap items. You buy a $38 pair of shoes because the $85 pair felt extravagant. 6 months later, they completely fall apart, so you buy another cheap pair. Across 2 years, you've spent $114 and you currently own 0 functional shoes. The $85 pair would have lasted 3 years and saved you $29. Cheap frugality only looks at the price tag right now. Real frugality calculates the cost per use across the entire lifespan of the item.
And this same false economy
totally destroys our income potential. We underfund our own futures because investing in them feels expensive. Imagine a freelancer working on a 6-year-old laptop that crashes during client calls because an upgrade feels indulgent. They end up losing billable hours and client trust. Or you skip buying a $30 financial book on tax advantage accounts that could have saved you thousands of dollars over a decade. Or, and this is a really big one, refusing to pay a small grocery delivery fee only to spend 4 grueling hours on a Saturday shopping trip that ends in $50 of impulse purchases. If a $15 subscription protects a compounding behavior like your ability to save or work efficiently, that is the frugal choice.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate, most devastating price of being cheap: your health. This number from the American Diabetes Association is shocking. The average annual medical cost for someone diagnosed with diabetes is roughly $12,000 higher per year. Over a 30-year post-diagnosis life, that is $360,000 in additional medical spending. Now, while genetics definitely play a role, a massive portion of this traces back to decades of buying bargain-processed food that quietly produced metabolic disease, skipping doctor visits to save a copay, and delaying dental work. Cheap frugality saves you $20 at the grocery store today, but it charges you hundreds of thousands at the doctor's office decades later.
Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds: pennies versus percentages. It is time to pivot away from tracking incidental purchases and start understanding the massive, life-changing financial levers. So many people have a spreadsheet tracking every single coffee down to the exact penny. But if you ask them what their effective tax rate is, or their debt-to-income ratio, or the expense ratios inside their 401k, they have absolutely no idea. Penny tracking produces a feeling of moral discipline, but percentage tracking, that's what actually dictates your financial survival. You have got to stop meticulously tracking incidentals and start tracking the big levers. Why? Because of the sheer scale of the math. Let's put this into perspective. If you make $75,000 a year, and you move your savings rate from 5% to 15%, across 30 years at an 8% return, you produce approximately $900,000 in additional retirement wealth. The penny tracking generated 0 of that. The percentage shift generated all of it. The math doesn't care about your feelings of discipline. It only cares about what compounds. Pennies feel controllable and percentages feel scary, but those scary numbers are where the actual wealth lives. Finally, Section 5, the structural wealth solution.
We need to analyze how the underlying economy has fundamentally changed, rendering old frugal habits completely obsolete. So I have to ask you directly, why isn't the math working? Why are the frugal things your parents or grandparents taught you back in 1955 no longer generating wealth today? Many of you are working harder, you're earning more, you're doing everything you were taught, and yet you feel more broke than ever. Let me tell you, it's not because you are financially irresponsible. It's because the tools you were given were calibrated for a completely different economy.
So, the crucial point is this 2026 reality. According to the Atlanta Fed, housing now consumes 48% of median household income. Experian data shows average car payments are sitting at $767 a month. By the time you add in insurance and subscriptions, 65 to 75% of your income is entirely committed before you ever clip your very first grocery coupon. Back in 1955, when housing was 20% of income, clipping coupons actually made a dent. Today, the structural costs are so incredibly massive that no amount of penny optimization at the margins can possibly fix the gap. The only meaningful intervention available to us is structural. And it all comes down to these 5 actionable decisions. 1. Choose smaller housing. 2. Buy used or paid-off transportation. 3. Optimize your insurance through an annual review. 4. Ruthlessly cut recurring subscriptions. And 5. Automate a 15% savings rate. Real wealth building is, well, it's shockingly boring once you understand it. Set these 5 structural decisions right, leave them alone for 30 years, and just let compound returns do the work. These 5 choices, executed once, produce vastly more wealth than a lifetime of extreme couponing ever could. I want to leave you with this thought directly from Alicia Invest's analysis. The cereal aisle didn't need to be the battleground. The big numbers were the battleground the whole time. You just couldn't see them through the noise of the small ones. Cheap frugality isn't a strategy. It's a costume of restraint worn over structural fragility. It feels protective, sure, but it changes absolutely nothing about the math. So the real question is, are you ready to finally drop the costume, stop agonizing over the cereal boxes, and face the big, uncomfortable numbers that will actually change your life?